I think we're ready to rock and roll. Good afternoon, everybody. How's everybody feeling? Great, yeah? All right. Thank you so much for being here. So my name is Jan Mujaya. I'm from Lutron Electronics, and I have the pleasure of being joined by a lot of industry experts today. And we really want this to be an engagement session, so please save a lot of your great questions at the end. We would love to hear from you. And today's topic is going to be about from checking in to check out, navigating through the complexity of technology that you find in the guest room and common spaces. So there's been a lot of conversation today about technology from the different panels, but I think today in this particular session, you're going to find it interesting coming from the perspective of those who actually roll up the sleeves and have been in the system, into the weeds, and hear about their experiences. So I'd like to take a moment to introduce my panelists, if we can just go around, starting with Will Gilbert.
So Will Gilbert, one of the co-founders of Bodhi. My background is over 20 years in the systems integration space, putting all those different devices and systems together over and over again. And so everything at Bodhi is what we've learned in those 20 years of integrating these systems to one simple platform now.
Thank you, Will. And let's pass it on to you, Joe.
Hi, my name is Joe Barres, TriStar Automation based out of Malibu, California. I have been in the electrical and lighting construction space for 32 years. Goes by quick. I specialize in guest room controls and branded residence controls, specifically lighting controls, motorized shading and temperature, as well as third-party integration into the hotel system.
All right. Finally, Bill.
Sure. Hi, my name is Bill Lally. I'm the president and founder of Mode Green. We are also a technology integrator similar to what Joe does. We're located primarily in New York, also do a lot of work in Florida, but in similar fashion, we've done this for about 15 years or so, specifically in the luxury hospitality space. So very familiar with the needs of guest controls, interfaces, and so forth. So part of the purpose of this panel is to help those that are not sort of the specialists on our side of it to help understand how these integrations work and how the technology plays into the guest experiences.
Thanks, Bill. And for those looking at Bill, you might think that this might be a hair club conversation, but it's not. So let's get back on topic here. So I'm going to open it up by just, acknowledging how much technology is in the space. And let's start with you, Will. With, hospitality technology spanning like guest room, public spaces, F&B, restaurant, and including back of house. What do you see as the biggest challenge for integrating these systems into something that's seamless? And we heard, frictionless yesterday, which is a good term, I thought, both for the guests and hotel staff.
Well, there's so many different systems and properties now. You kind of have to do it. With code compliance, you have to have the smart tech in the rooms to turn the lights off when the guest isn't there, let the temperature drift in wider ranges. And when you have all these different systems, the network is very important in getting everything up and running. So from what we do is partner with all different manufacturers across the board. We integrate them back to our platform that's needs no special network configurations done. So that's one of the main challenges, especially during new construction, is getting that network up and running and getting things online. So what we've done is now eliminated that problem, or at least reduced it drastically in getting those systems on one platform.
Good feedback. So, Lutron, we focus on lighting control, and that's really just one aspect in the number of systems that are out there that you described, right? So I think Bodhi gives that platform and the ability to tie things together. From the implementation side, I'll just expand it, Bill or Joe, if you'd like to add your comments to that.
I think for us as technologists, one of the challenges is making it not overwhelming and not daunting for those that are not involved in technology. Everything seems complicated, and we were talking last night, and creating simple solutions for guests is complicated. There's so many systems involved in hotels. There's so many different parameters. You're dealing with occupancy. You're dealing with, to Will's point, energy codes that have to be met. There's just a whole lot going on, and to create that where it doesn't become overcomplicated for a guest, in our opinion, if something takes longer than 10 or 15 seconds for a guest to figure out, we've failed in our design of technology. It really needs to be just at face value obvious. I mean, you all, I don't know how you're staying here, but there's a lot of buttons in these rooms even here, and there's a lot going on with that. And to understand what's happening, it's not like somebody's estate home where you don't have 3 months to sit there and train them how to use their systems. It's got to be just blatantly obvious, and we don't want to be a hindrance to the guest experience. We want to stay out of the way. The tech's just got to be seamless and work. And I think that's one of our challenges, and we're seeing solutions like Bodhi come on the market that can aggregate all of these different systems together to create simple facing solutions to those that aren't on the technology side of it, but still enables the tools and the simplicity to be taken advantage of from an operational standpoint.
Yeah, so in order to make that happen, just what Bill is saying is to have the technology brought into the project at the concept and design phase prior to construction documents. So, a lot of times integrators are brought in when the construction documents are already complete, ready for contractor bidding or pre-construction budgeting. But, we feel that to take the complication out of technology, to make it as easy as we want it to be guest-facing and super intuitive, that would mean bringing us on as a designer early on so we can meet with ownership, understand the needs of the client, what the guest experience is that you envision for your guest, and we help design to make that happen, obviously working well with the design teams, especially the interior design team, so we understand about finishes and locations of devices with, millwork, integration of the headboards, all that good stuff, so that way when the job does get under construction, it's all kind of already done. It's like pre-planning. So it seems so simple, but obviously proper planning equals proper results. And unfortunately, the current construction kind of process isn't as seamless as that, and it should be. And that's what we're all trying to do, is to change that.
Thanks. So what I'm hearing is, again, you may find a way to connect, various systems together, but also what you're bringing up is the pre-planning, figuring out, our favorite acronym perhaps to some here, like sequence of operations, so they're connected, but what do you want them to do once they are connected? Those are all very important throughout the construction cycle from inception to when it's reality.
Right, so knowing what and how the operator wants it is how the system gets designed, instead of saying, okay, we have a bunch of this stuff everywhere, and then we're trying to now connect the dots, but it shouldn't have to be that way. So we want to start from the beginning and then basically have the systems exactly the way you expect it to be.
I'm going to hone in a little bit then in a particular space and taking from Bill and punting it over to you, Will. In terms of the guest room itself, I'm just curious, how many people stay here? Many, okay, so then perhaps we can get some good feedback on how your experience was. But inside the guest room itself, what do you see as the technology that's really creating the most impact in the guest room and the guest experience? Whether it's something that you've seen recently, something that you foresee maybe becoming more relevant? Curious about your opinion.
Yeah, so what we've noticed is that people don't want to download apps on their phone. It takes time, and it's not that great of an experience. And so what we've done is, since we have all these different devices in the room and around the property connected back to our service, we're able to send a link to you at check-in, nothing to install. So that web link opens up. You can share it with other people that are staying with you. It's fully authenticated back to the property management system, so there's no security issues there. Walking up to the door instead of actually having to present the phone and fumble with the access part of the door, you just press a button on the phone and that door unlocks. And then coming into the space and being able to talk to the room, voice is coming. People have it at home. They're going to have it more in hotel spaces, and being able just to say, turn the lights on. All the time when I wake up in a hotel, the first thing I do is grab my phone, and then I use that phone usually to find where the button is on the wall to turn the lights on or open the drapes or shades. With what we're doing, we have that phone. You can just do it right from there. I
see. So I'm hearing either keeping it very simple and accessible, or make sure you have a flashlight next to the bed.
Pretty much.
Yeah. All right. Maybe I'll punt it over to Bill and Joe if you want to chime in a little bit on that.
Yeah, and I think part of it too is that we're trying to figure out how to balance that equation between those that will embrace technology in a guest room or anywhere within a hotel versus those that want to operate things more traditionally. And for us, I think redundancy is important, and having multiple ways to do something in a room is still important. And we want to be able to have tactile devices, switches and thermostats and things like that, and then also enable sort of a deeper dive from the tech side of mobile devices and all the other things that can be done to really allow the guest to really customize and tailor their experiences if they want to. But for those that don't choose to do that, you still have another way to do things. So it's really a balance of appealing to all demographics in that space. And it even isn't broken down by age as much anymore as it is just preferences. And so being able to design those systems and to your point earlier about just having to pre-plan that and all the different things that have to get connected through this process and design and everything else, to be able to look at all aspects of that throughout that process and make sure that you're able to hit all of your demographics both with technology and just in simple room comfort, I think is important.
If I could just add real quick to that, something, not even for the guest side of things, for the technology part of it, wouldn't it be nice to make sure when that guest actually gets to the room and opens the door that it's a nice environment that they're in? So the technology that we're providing lets the hotel know ahead of time how these systems are performing, letting them know there's a problem, and you need to take that room out of service before you have a guest that goes to it. Then you have to go find them another room. So that ties in with the ROI side of things, not just in the financial aspect, but also the ratings on Yelp and all of that. So the technology plays a major part in having that room ready for that guest to come in, even before they use their phone.
And Joe, before you maybe chime in, in terms of like the guest-centric tech, like I'm gonna do a shameless plug. I think lighting plays a lot of, effect into the room and the experience, right? So I'm just curious, is it TV? I mean, is it a gaming system? I'm just curious if you're seeing any.
Yeah, so for me in the guest rooms, what I see trending, and it's important, is something that's very simple, which is getting down to the lighting control. So the people that raise their hands that are staying here, if you notice, the keypads are all have engraved terms, whether it's nightlight or welcome, away, relax, and reading. So all those type of things is very. Maybe they don't have it in their home, and maybe they don't, but it's nice when you come to a hotel. It's so exciting when you're in a new property, you're on vacation, you're here for an event, and you walk into that room, just like Will was saying, is if everything's connected in the system, so a welcome scene is very easily deployed to the guests if they're first time coming here, so they're able to walk into a dark room, then the lights will go to a certain level, or different lights, different levels to create an ambiance. Depending on the time of day, the shades will open, the drapes will open, and it gives you that wow effect, especially if you have kids. When they come into the room for the first time, it's super excited. They all fight on who wants to use the key to get in. So that excitement should still be given to the guests, and I think that it's something that should be implemented everywhere. And then getting back to what I was saying earlier about the engraving of the keypads, because lighting controls is super important. It needs to be intuitive, but it is nice when there's a nightlight feature where you can, at the bedside, just roll over, hit a button intuitively, and then it would give you a pathway to the bathroom. So I think that it's not something that's overlooked, but I think that more care and thought should be done ahead of time from the guest perspective. Is, hey, I'm a guest in this hotel. What do you think I would want? And that's how it can be designed. So then when it's actually being used, it makes sense, and you don't have any afterthoughts like, oh, why didn't we do that? Because during the planning process, there are a lot of chefs in the kitchen, as that's how that term came about, and it's important to understand, really what ownership wants for the guest, as if they're a guest, and that's how it could be done once and done right.
Thanks. And Will, I want to expand a little bit. You mentioned about the simplicity of not necessarily downloading an app, right? And for the guests to figure out, or even wait for downloading an app. So how do you ensure, as an organization that allows the aggregation of different technologies, how do you ensure that adoption is easy and without overwhelming the end user or making them frustrated? What are some measures that you take?
One is making it easy for them to get access to it. So, at check-in, when they confirm your phone number and email address, it's in the PMS, we use that number to send you a simple text. When that app opens up, it doesn't bombard you with needing to authenticate 10 different ways to get into it. It just works. And since we have tremendous partnerships with different manufacturers, a guest room might have a Lutron lighting system, but it might also have someone else's motorized drapery in that room, and then somebody else's IPTV system, and somebody else's HVAC system. But since we have these strong partnerships, though, we're always maintaining them, and so the app is always going to work. The app doesn't have to rely on the hotel Wi-Fi. It can be working over cellular. That app doesn't have to physically talk to all different devices in the room. Bodhi does that from the cloud back to the room. So by having those partnerships and being in delivering that experience very easily through a link, makes it the adoption is very high.
So you're a lot of people's best friends then, right?
Absolutely.
Well, I think to tag on to that as well, it's not just even on the guest side from that perspective. It's also how are we making the back-end operational pieces more streamlined as well and more efficient. So I know that we were chatting last night with some of those sitting in the back of the room over here, but like staffing is a huge problem for everybody, and finding qualified staff and finding people that care or just want to work in general. If we're able to make those people more efficient or reduce the number of employees a hotel needs by combining these systems or making these systems operate more efficiently together, or giving better access and better control so that the devices are actually usable versus having to log into 15 different dashboards for all your different systems, and it can be aggregated again into a single platform. Forgetting the guest side for a minute, it makes the whole operational side more efficient as well, and then the hotels are just able to run better, run cheaper, and everything else. So I think it is the simplicity is a huge factor of that.
So let's shift a little bit to one of the topics that's for this session, which is complexity. And I spent a little bit of time in my career at Lutron working with the spec community. So, architects, interior designer, lighting designer, MEP firms, to make sure that we put the right drawings in place, to make sure that, hopefully throughout the SD, DD, CD, and bid set, that everything that you intend to put in there is reflected between that sequence of operations to all the way to the design, down to the detail of whether it's keypads or HVAC. I want to open this up to you, Joe and Bill. So when you get to that point and you are rolling out the technology solutions, often the coordination between manufacturers, integrators and hotel operators, sometimes brand for the standards, and then you actually have the developer, the ownership side. It can be a challenge, because we're going to have a lot of people, hopefully, sitting on one round table. So what are some of the best practices for ensuring that smooth collaboration across these different functional teams?
Okay, so it is a complicated process, the construction process. You have a lot of different trades working. A lot of their hands are all in the similar technology, whether it's the low voltage trades, the line voltage trades, the carpentry trades. So I think as the integrator, what's important for us to take responsibility for is kind of owning the system. So even if we're not doing the HVAC, obviously, we should still be kind of running those kind of on a consultant basis to make sure that they're on the same page. Because if we assume all these trades know what they're doing based on the design drawings, we're really kind of doing the client a disservice, because after everything's finished, then you're trying to put out fires for no reason. So I think that we like the challenge to take on that opportunity, and being in the construction trade as long as we are, we all speak those trade languages because we are those trades. It's easier for us to take ownership of it instead of trying to play the blame game later on, like, oh, this one didn't do this, or they didn't see this, RFI, or they didn't read the submittals properly. So it's important for us to spend a lot of time kind of managing, under the general contractor, obviously, but making sure the wiring trades are doing what we need to do, so when, the system does get integrated and implemented for ownership, it's done correctly, because too many projects go the opposite. So I would say the advice is to take ownership of the project, even if it's not actually your wheelhouse that you're going to do. Just take responsibility for it, so then it'll just work.
Yeah, and I think one of the other challenges, particularly in new construction, is a lot of times the brand and the operator is not brought in until long after these decisions are made, years after these decisions are made. So we're not always lucky enough to have the brand involved early enough to understand why these decisions were made, or basically why the building was, all the systems that were chosen and built throughout the process. A lot of times they're brought in 3 to 6 months before opening, and there's a giant transition of information that has to take place during that term. And there's a lot of second guessing as to why did this happen, why did that happen, why didn't you do this, why didn't you do that, and they were budget conversations that took place years prior. So I think it's managing expectations and then being able to tailor whatever you can sort of at the last minute to provide the operator what they want, but still playing within the contents of what was designed initially, staying within budget, and then also making sure that we're deploying on time and not, to your point, making changes too late that are going to now affect timelines and delay openings and construction schedules. So that's one of the bigger challenges we do see is having the operator get involved early enough that we can capture those ideas and that information for that guest experience or for that brand standard and implement that along the way.
I'm just curious, do you see, in terms of the business structure, or maybe a little bit touching on the way the contract is structured, this positioning integrators in one shape or the other gives you a little bit more better access, perhaps, to the executing team, right? I mean, whether you're working through ownership or GC or EC, I'm curious.
Yeah, I think the higher we are in the food chain as integrators, the better off we are, in the sense that we can be advocates for really the brand and the implementation. Our relationship is much longer term than the contractors are in most cases. They're building a building. They don't care if it's a hotel or a hospital or a bank. They're building a building and they're out. Where we have long-term relationships to help maintain the operations of the facility, understanding how hospitality works, understanding the guest expectations, and carrying that through for the long-term relationship side. So I do think if we're able to act almost as an advisor or a peer to the construction side of it. It helps us to manage that and be able to work and bridge those technology gaps on behalf of the brand and the operator to create much more seamless transitions throughout the opening process and then the ongoing relationship.
Yeah, that's exactly true. So if you look at a standard set of construction documents for a luxury project, on the first page, there's maybe 15 consultants on the drawing. If there is a 16th consultant, which is an integrator, then the job's going to come out amazing, because we are involved in all the different aspects of it. So we're looking at the network, we're looking at the entire electrical infrastructure, we're looking at finishes, we're looking at where are the missing pieces. When there is not an integrator involved as a consultant on the design side, those are all unknowns. So then when they do get on board, is where we kind of discover, oh, we're missing this, we're missing that, and that does affect budget. So it's important to try to get us on the design consulted level in the beginning to ensure that process is smooth.
Yeah, I was wondering, Jan, on your side, the dedicated channels, right, hospitality channels. What do you do as far as educating those people?
Yeah, I mean, I think education is the key piece because in any given solution, we really try to make sure every stakeholder understand, right, like a cost and effect of every decision that is made. Whether it's an aesthetic choice or a functionality choice, that's why I'm in the industry. That's why we have a global team, because we want to make sure that we can get access to as many of our stakeholders as possible, and that's working with ownership, the brand, understanding the brand standard and that they're a guideline, and still leave enough room for flexibility. And when it comes push to shove and you have to do something different, can we still deliver the same experience by making other alternate suggestions, or in this case, perhaps using a different platform that can tie in other, let's say, non-traditional GRMS system, but making a package that would still work, right? Which then really elevate and escalates the need for a quality integrator. But on the manufacturing side, education is key for us. Right? Yeah. Nice. So from the audience side, I want to see if I can survey anybody from the revenue, from the money side, developer. Yeah, all right, excellent. You're my guy. Another one, all right. So, probably a question to you, Bill, here a little bit. A lot of times we get asked about ROI, right, and again, how it relates to sustainability, energy management. The guest experience has evolved from just making sure the room is not too hot or too cold to now making it very experiential. So I'm just curious in terms of operational efficiency, which obviously is connecting all the integrating pieces. How can technology drive potentially measurable ROI, and also then how does it help maybe ESG goals or sustainability goals at a property?
Yeah. So to Bill's point, it starts with the back of house and operations first. So the technology, since it's looking at or the services, since it's looking at all the different hardware aspects of the room, HVAC, lighting, knowing that those devices are all working and online and working properly. There are some properties that between check-in and check-out, they'll send people to the room to press all the buttons and make sure everything is still working. When you have a good system that's tied in with all these different manufacturers and we're actually getting real data back, and when I say real data, like a motorized window treatment, not just knowing if the thing is online or offline, but knowing if it's jammed, being able to get that data back from the motor and letting someone know that there is an issue in that room. Everyone has a smart thermostat. You instantly get 30 to 40% savings right off the bat by having a occupancy-based thermostat. But what we're doing to greater enhance that is, if the room isn't rented, then let it drift a bit further away. And then when the room does get rented, then start tightening up those thresholds, and that results in a lot of savings and sustainability goals as well. We're also being able to do things since guest presence detection usually is just occupancy sensors. With a system like Bodhi, being able to see if the guest turned on the TV or pressed a button in the room. We have all these different extra indicators if they're there or not, because one of the large requests that we're getting now over and over is that they want to turn that room over as quickly as possible. So if we notice that maybe the door opened at 5 a.m. and then there have been no button presses, no occupancy detected by say 7 or 8 a.m., let's go ahead and send them a text and say, have you checked out yet? And if you have, could you click this, because we'll incentivize you with a resort credit or something like that. That way they can get in there and flip that room quicker.
That's interesting because that applies to some of the technology discussion yesterday about even how do you extend beyond the checkout afterwards, right? A lot of platforms are being built to make sure they stay connected even when they get home. So, Bill, maybe I want to touch on it between balancing guest satisfaction with operational efficiency, right? Where do you find that middle ground at?
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is really brand and operator specific as far as how far you push that envelope of impacting or altering the guest room state when the guest is not in the room versus the energy savings that is on the other side of that. And a lot of these systems that are being implemented now that have become commonplace, they used to be sort of nice to have or good fun things that they were not necessities. They were nice to have, they weren't have to haves. And now energy codes have changed. There isn't really the option. You've got to have master switch control. You've got to have occupancy detection. And so you're sort of 85% of the way there from a cost standpoint to then put all the nice things in there and making that guest experience that much better. So it's kind of balanced itself out in the sense that you've got to do this stuff anyway, so you might as well use that to enhance the guest room and make it a more luxurious experience. At the same time, you're getting those cost savings on the back end. But without the metrics and without systems that are able to pull that data, as Will was saying, you don't really know where you're at. So we don't know how we're impacting those guests if we don't have the metrics to understand what's happening actually happening in that room and how much we're pushing temperature or how much we're having the room change when they go out and do, they go out to dinner and they come back and the room's completely different. The lights are off, the shades are closed. Like, how far can you push that? It seems to get pushed much less on the luxury side of it because the mentality has been, well, the guest is paying $1,000 a night for this room. We're just going to leave it alone and they can use as much energy as they want to. We're working on a property in New York City right now that was untouched for a number of years, and they're being fined constantly by the city because they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing from an energy standpoint. And so now they've had to rethink their entire situation from a luxury standpoint and a guest experience standpoint to start to tailor that in and wrangle in just free-for-all that they were having over the years because what they're being fined by the city is now exceeding what they were saving, what they would have been saving in energy or guest experience. So again, it's always this balance and it's sort of constantly evolving. And the lower markets, the 2 and 3 and 4 stars, they're going to push that envelope harder. Luxury, it's still much more wide open, but I think the rules are then changing and the local laws are changing to force that to be tailored in those environments as well.
Thank you. So far we've kind of built the layers of talking about just broadly what technologies can get into hotel space. We talk about some of the guest-facing, guest-centric technology, and some of the coordination and complexity. So maybe we can change our mindset a little bit towards opportunities now, which I feel the opportunity is when the technology is actually being adopted, being used. So I'm just curious, what are some of the strategies to make sure that the system is being adopted by training the hotel staff to use the system effectively? Like, how do you manage that? Let's start with you, Joe.
So in order to train the staff appropriately, one of the things I found is really a really good approach is when the property is about to open is not when you first train the staff. It's actually during construction, and if we don't have the liberty of getting these ladies and gentlemen on site, we do it virtually through looking at the drawings. So then when they do get on site, they're understanding a little bit. And I think one of the most positive feedback that I've received rather is that when you're training the staff on site at the time of opening, you have to treat them like they've never seen lights before, they've never seen controls before, they've never seen a thermostat before. Even though these are engineers and these are people that have been in the industry for a long time, I like to wipe their whole memory clean and start fresh because that way, they're really understanding how it was wired, where is it located, why is it located there, why is the engraving the way it is, how the door contacts work, what happens when you open up the patio door and the thermostat gives you a warning that this condensation buildup is going to shut the unit down, to send the message to the front, every single thing you could think of. So, they feel like they're really being empowered by that. And then obviously in the hotels, there are different verticals in regards of the guest room types, right? You have, standard rooms, but then you have your suites, and then you have your penthouses, you have your branded residences. Even though the controls are similar and they're of, the same manufacturers, I still like to look at each room category separately because, it may be a little bit different in this room. So, it's just about, kind of treating them with kid gloves as if they don't have any experience and starting over and then going through each room category so they really understand, what it is. Because if you leave something for them to second guess, it's only going to create more work and frustration for everybody here. So we want to empower them to run with it. And that's it.
Bill, did you want anything to add to that?
I think Joe nailed it.
Okay,
I think
got
he's-
it.
Yeah, I mean, they really.
If we have any DOE, they might say as-built set, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Proper as-built.
Yeah, of
to
course.
be
No,
accepted.
and I think it's, I mean, we are on another project now where we're lucky enough where the engineers have been very engaged in the process of it's a massive renovation project, and the engineering team has been very involved in the deployment of these systems. And so they've been on site working to understand how the systems are actually wired, how the panels are being done, like the actual nuts and bolts of this, because ultimately they're the first line of service when the hotel actually opens. And so we've been fortunate there where they've been very engaged and wanting to understand the process and been very hands-on. So I think, again, if you can engage them early, to Joe's point, sort of start clean, but if they're engaged and willing to learn, we're certainly happy to take the time to show them.
Yeah.
All right, so we don't have a late checkout for this session, so I want to speed through the next one here. So Bill, staying with you, just looking ahead, what do you see as the next major trend or innovation in hospitality technology, and how should hotels prepare for it now? Let's start with you.
Sure. I think what we're seeing is obviously it's a lot of lifestyle stuff. It's a lot of wellness, and then just immersive experiences, and using technology, using AI, all these different things to really tailor guest experiences at a much higher level than we're seeing now. So I think that's where things are headed.
What do you see, Joe?
For me, I think the light fixture technology is really prevalent, especially in branded residences. Instead of having static, Kelvin color temperature in the lighting, I think that having a warm, dim fixture technology is really important, so that way you're actually creating this incandescent style mood and using the lighting controls to enhance their experience and giving some like little cool little touches. There's a lot of elements. You have a lot of tape light, around the bed frame. You have millwork lighting. You have down lighting. So I think that's important to the quality of light, and the dimming technology is the trend that I'm seeing that needs to be continued.
Okay. And how about you, Will?
And one phrase that I like hearing, or I've heard, is hospitality isn't spelled HOTEL, right? A lot of people now have a concierge doctor, right? That's a luxury thing to have. And I think in healthcare, you're going to start seeing being able to have these technologies there, having the mobile app to be able to lay there in that bed and be able to order things that you would want, and not just have a nurse call button. Having more of an experience in these places, and that also goes back to the family members of someone that might be staying at a hospital, being able to communicate with them and understand when someone is in and out of surgery better, what their next steps are in their room when they can actually visit them. So I think you're going to see it in the healthcare space dramatically in the next few years. Bringing in this more luxury experience, just like concierge doctors today.
Terrific. And as promised, I do want to keep it for any questions from the audience. There are any burning questions? Curious minds? While we have them up? No? All right. I do want to thank my panelists, right? You got Bill Lawley from Mode Green, Joe Boris from TriStar Automation, and of course, Will Gilbert and Kevin Miller there sitting out in the audience from Bodhi, and from everybody. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Please feel free to grab us for a more insightful conversation, and have a good rest of your stay. Thank you so much.